Well, I proved my point. In a week, I will turn 65 years old. That's going to be sent off to some home. I can't operate devices and all this sort of thing. But I will be 65, and this is only the 5th time that I can count that I will not be spending Thanksgiving with my family, which makes it unusual, as it is, I know, for many of you. There have been a couple other unusual Thanksgivings, and the very first time I was really away from my family in graduate school, far away, not able really to come home for that holiday weekend, and really being by myself, it was rather strange. And then there was a party that was organized. I was at the University of Alabama. This was going to graduate school, a refugee party for those who had not been able to go home for Thanksgiving. And it was very nice to go to that, and they said to bring a covered dish, which I didn't have anything like that. A graduate student, you know. Mother told me we'd get some Corningware. That seemed good. And I remember I went to the Sears in Tuscaloosa and bought a really nice piece of Corningware with the blue flower on it, you know, the glass lid, that Corningware. And anyway, when it came time to go to the party, I went to the party. I came to the door, rang the doorbell. The hostess came out. It was the wife of one of our graduate students. Thanked me for coming. I handed my dish to her. She thanked me. She went into the house. I went in to greet the other visitors. So far, that's a rather ordinary Thanksgiving, isn't it? But then she came out to me in the living room and she said, "Gary, there's nothing in the dish." I had, of course, believed that all was asked of me was to bring a covered dish to Thanksgiving. Absolutely true story. That was unusual. I have friends on Facebook that will point this out again today, that someone's already helpfully put on my news feed, remember to bring a covered dish. So this is something people know about me. Now, I kind of opened with something humorous, and I'm going to change the mood necessarily, really juxtapose these two things for you. So this year being very unusual in my mind because not being present with family, we're all wearing masks and all the different things that we're having to do, I thought that was going to make this Thanksgiving unusual. And then life happened just a few days ago. I was called to Norton's Hospital early Saturday morning. One of the couples who I'm preparing for marriage over at St. James, they were expecting already their first child and had learned that their child did not have a detectable heartbeat and they were going to induce labor around 6 to 7 months. So I rushed to the hospital. They asked if the baby could be baptized and bought the implements. So you baptize an infant child with an eyedropper. That's what you use. And I got all those materials and got over to Norton, and you know it's not easy, particularly now, to get into a hospital. It all had to be arranged. And then anyway, when I was to be called back, I anointed the mother, called back when it was time for her to deliver a child. And so I went in that evening, about 8 o'clock they called, asked me to come back. So I came all the way back. And when she had her child, it was about 6 to 7 months, and her name is Olivia, and I was able to baptize her and use the formula and do the blessing prayer with the family. Anyway, that was the visit. There I was looking at that child. There was a real person. You could see her face. You could see everything, and then so aware of the tragedy. This is a couple. This is their first child. All the different things that are happening. They're in this hospital with very limited visiting privileges. In fact, only her husband or her fiance could even be there with her other than me. And then it was Tuesday afternoon that we had the burial service at St. Michael Cemetery. I still haven't really quite yet recovered from that. I've had a few of these infant funerals, and each one of them devastate me. And so the emotions, I mean, everyone cried, including me, which is just terribly tragic. Everything about it is tragic. And as I drove away, very, very upset, from the cemetery, it occurred to me to say to God, thank you for the privilege of being able to baptize that child and to be able to tell her parents that her child is in heaven where they will watch over her. None of this is going to brighten their mood. None of this is going to make their Thanksgiving more fun today. It will do none of those things, but it will do something that will allow them, as their mystery of their life continues to unfold, to grieve with the hope and anticipation that they will see their child when their time comes to arrive in the heavenly kingdom. And I was able to thank God for having the privilege of being there and for him reminding me of all the inconveniences of this week. And I remind him on a regular basis how inconvenient all of this is for me, for my flock, for my family. It reminded me for all of the inconveniences I complain about, how extraordinary God is when he's present in those most precious, sacred, and difficult moments. So Jesus knew this, and he knew that during the episode with the leper, we always read it on Thanksgiving Day, the 10 lepers. He knew instantly upon coming into the town that these were persons who needed the healing that only he could give. And so he offered that healing for them and told them, go show yourselves to the priests. That was what was needed to be done so that they could be readmitted back to their communities. And one of the 10 actually realizes that Jesus has been the agent of the healing and comes back to thank him. And Jesus says, where are the other 9? Not out of any sense of criticism, but just simply observing that this one person, this Samaritan, realized that he'd been healed by God, realized that he needed to give thanks back to him. And he tells him to go and know that his faith has saved you. What entered into my mind is this whole idea of giving thanks. In one of those regular and I think inane discussions that happen on Facebook where people are arguing about whether the church should be open, the church should be closed. I was seeing one of those threads from one of my Facebook friends, and somebody remarked on there about the church as being open, that God doesn't care whether you're at home or in church. And I thought, I wonder what your where did you get that? I mean, how do you really know what God cares about? The first thing I was thinking about. The other part I've thought about, but what is the difference about being at home and being at church? And the difference, which of course is known to you that are physically present, known to those who can't come because it feels unsafe for them to be here. They're very aware of what the difference is. The difference is that here we can engage, much like we can with our family when we can, in the ritual of giving thanks. You see, that is what it is that we do. Every word of the worship from the very beginning to the blessing at the very end is the giving of thanks and praise to God, who bestows on us many gifts, who's present to us in our most difficult moments, who gives us the hope of being reunited with the people we love the most in the life to come, and is the agent of all the healing that is a part of our life. And we get to actually experience the giving of thanks. I was thinking of that question, God doesn't care if you're in your house or not. Probably not, but God actually does love when we give thanks to him. And the discipline of giving him thanks in the house is, I don't know about you, but for me, much more difficult than when I'm in this environment and realize this is a place where it is very logical, obvious, and important that we would be ones that give thanks. And then the last thing I want to say is that it's a real discipline when you and I give thanks when, well, we're not really very thankful. You know, I remember when I was a little kid, when we want something and we were not happy about it, my mother would say, what do you say? Me go, thank you. You know, all that said with an attitude, which then makes you wonder, what was the point of that whole exercise? You really weren't thankful. You were being made to say it. You were just simply saying words. And for many people, that's what worship is. It's just saying words. They'll come and watch what you're doing. You all say the same thing. Thank goodness it would be a cacophony if we all said different things, right? I mean, it's the whole idea of organized worship. That's like my sister who said, I don't believe in organized religion. I said, well, do you believe in disorganized religion? I mean, what is it that you want? This ritual that we do is when we give thanks and we do it together, we're mindful that whom we are thanking, which is God. And as you and I have the privilege of receiving Holy Communion, I'm always forcing myself to remember that in that encounter, we are being visited by God himself, who is giving the fullness of everything he has to us. There's nothing more that God can give than we receive anytime we receive any particular sacrament. That's everything. There's nothing left out. And why? And so often we don't realize that. Why? Because we depart from here still irritated about the traffic, still upset or fearful about the pandemic, looking at the problems of the world that seems unsolvable. That's why it's difficult for us when we leave here. But you and I need the discipline of remembering that all of this is temporary and that God has provided an end, a means and an end to our suffering. And when that time comes, we will experience what's called the eternal joy of heaven. And what we spend time on Thanksgiving Day and the other days when we're mindful of it is being reminded that's the whole point of this entire, sometimes absurd exercise that we call life. The point is that whatever it is that is transitory will come and will pass, but what is eternal will be with us forever. Once we hold on to that, even though we don't understand it, we have what's called hope. And when you have hope, even when those parents of that infant child this week go through the most shattering experience parents can possibly go through, the loss of their own precious child, even in the darkest of moments we can possibly imagine, there's always that hope. And hope isn't just, I hope things get better. That's how we use the word here. Heavenly hope is different. It's real, it's a promise, it's delivered to us as it was to Olivia at her baptism, even if it has to be from an eyedropper. And that hope is more extraordinary than anything you and I can possibly imagine. It's once again God giving us the gift of everything. So this most unusual of Thanksgivings, whatever inconvenience or even maybe more difficulty you may discover as you move throughout this day, take a moment to be reminded that all of this will soon pass, that God will provide for everything, that we have a hope that allows us to anticipate that at the end of our life, we will then experience that great eternity, in which case then it will be much easier for us to do the one thing we can do now while we hope, which is to give thanks.